Right, okay. Recording, check. Video and sound, check. Large supply of Pepsi Max, check. Right, I shall cue us in. Hello, good evening, and welcome. I'm Simon Bestwick.
And I'm Gemma Files, and this, of course, must be
No darkness.
No darkness but ours. At any rate, we're here today with Charlie Steeds, the auteur behind Gods of the Deep and so many other things.
We did a thing a little while back where we talked about films we'd seen, which we really liked, and I picked 5, Gemma picked 5, and one of the ones that Gemma picked was Gods of the Deep, which... and I kind of realised I'd actually seen one of your films already, An English Haunting, which I'd really liked. And it was kind of like, it's that guy, right? And since then I've kind of binged everything that I could I could find. So, I mean, House of Violent Desire, which, oh boy, I'm looking forward. There's going to be so much to discuss with that one. I love that film. Winter Skin, An English Haunting, Dead Man Apocalypse, aka Labyrinthia, Escape from Cannibal Farm, the barge.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll be here. I could be here half the night just listing the Uber. So, first and foremost, Charlie, welcome to No Darkness But Ours, and thank you very much for agreeing to do an interview.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I mean, Gemma essentially really loved. One of the things she really admired about you is your work ethic and just the sheer amount of stuff you do, which is something. I did have a look at I did manage to watch most of the interview you did with Laurie Brewster a while back, and yeah, you were saying it's kind of like that kind of compulsion thing, which I remember running into one of my old college tutors some years ago, and he sort of said, "Oh yeah, I remember you. I always remember the committed nutters," which was like, yeah, that's. I think that describes most of us who try to make any kind of living career vocation out of all this,
out of what we love, out of doing what we love.
Yes, I mean you've produced your first feature film, that was Dead Man Apocalypse, also known as Labyrinth. Now that came out in 2016, and we're now in 2024. How many features have you directed now?
I think it's 16. I think through my company Dark Temple there's 17 movies. There's one I didn't direct. So yeah, 16 I think.
when you're losing track of how many films you've done, that's all the work ethic. I don't know, Gemma, do you want to?
I'm gonna start by saying that basically Simon recommended An English Haunting to me at the beginning of the pandemic, and I looked it up and was super impressed and decided to look you up on Tubi. And discovered there were all these other films that you had directed, and that just kept increasing in number as I went along. And I got to say that I am absolutely impressed with how much you've been able to do over the time that you've done it, but also I'm super impressed by the fact that everything improves. It keeps getting better and better and better. And there's something about you seem to be taking the whole Tubi thing and running with it in a way that people did previously during the straight to video era, like Charles Band, people like that, where it's like, okay, well, I only have so much money, but I'm going to do what I want. It's wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, that sometimes, in the case of like Gods of the Deep, it sometimes leads to me just sort of looking back at what I've made and kind of thinking it was a bit crazy to take on something so huge and ambitious. So I am always, I'm always trying to sort of like, monitor where my ambition is going and where my creativity is going, and trying to make sure that the two things align, but all of them are budget, low budget, or even super, super, super low budget.
Well,
and sometimes the ideas are not, but I try, for better or worse, I try not to let the budget stop me from going out there with the big ideas, which can lead to some really strange and interesting results, like in the case of Gods of the Deep, or even, like you just mentioned, my very first feature, Labyrinthia, aka Dead Man Apocalypse, which, I hate to talk about, or I hate to even, recognize that it exists, because I'd rather just forget that one.
But it's kind of out of place with a lot of the stuff that you did, because you're very much with Cannibal Farm and the budget. You're very much showing your love of those kind of pulpy straight to video 80s movies, like by people like Fulci and Stuart Gordon and stuff like that. But I mean, I again, I'm sort of hugely. I mean, it's something. One thing I always love is directors who, for their first film, especially, do something that's completely counter to what people would expect from them.
Like Peter Strickland. And the idea of doing like what essentially is a underground version of Mad Max done in tunnels.
complete with Fury Road on go-karts. I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, my biggest worry, as far as I would have thought, the biggest sort of danger on set really would be stopping Barrington de la Roche chewing up the entire set. I mean, he's kind of like a fixture in so many of your films, and there's just something quite extraordinary about him. And in that one in particular, it's just I love these kind of like tin-popped megalomaniacal rulers who rule some kind of tiny little kingdom and continue to think they're godlike, even as everything's falling to bits around them. And I just loved some of the lines. Shut your snivelling hole, you filthy dogs, Bollock. What? I think he said, I don't know how much of that was in the script and how much of that was just Barrington going off on one there.
Well, yeah, me and Barrington have been working together for a long time. Unfortunately, at the moment, in the last few years, he's been working much less. He's kind of like, says he's sort of retired from doing any acting now. So that's why he's not really popped up in anything, in a good few years. Although in my not latest movie, but second to latest movie, he does have a small role. So I managed to get him back. Just for the hell of having him back on set. But yeah, I mean, back when we were doing Labyrinthia, Cannibal Farm, House of Violent Desire, Winter Skin, I was always writing roles for Barrington. Specifically, I needed him to be there and to be part of it. And kind of, even though it wasn't that long ago, because it's like 15 or 14 movies ago, it kind of does feel quite a long time ago, and in a way that those feel like kind of like the good old days already, of like having Barrington around on set all the time. But we met way back when I was at film school. I went to the Met Film School in Ealing. It's actually based inside Ealing Studios. And I was doing an audition for a film it was a short film about Satanists, and Barrington came along to the audition, and it was just such a wacky and weird audition. And he basically won me over right then and there in the audition. He kind of just came in and he delivered he was just delivering a monologue. And he was delivering the whole monologues, sort of staring right into my eyes, which can actually be really off-putting in an audition, because when someone locks eye contact with you. And he was sort of like crawling along the audition table towards me and reaching out for me, and then started to tell me that he actually has a history of black magic and Satanism himself.
Oh God!
So he got the role, needless to say.
I'm not surprised.
And then by the time we were doing Labyrinthia, which was just bonkers anyway, like the concept of making a movie in all these tiny little wooden tunnels where you had to crawl around on your knees, was already like presenting a whole set of challenges, and even more challenges to someone who was in their 70s, having to crawl around. But there was one day in particular where you're from the movie, you'll recognize there are these scenes where he's sort of like smoking on a shisha pipe, which he's always sort of smoking on when he's in his lair, or his like emperor's lair, which is actually just, this tiny little wooden tunnel thing. But Barrington, he's like, he doesn't smoke, he doesn't drink, he doesn't do any of those sorts of things, because in his past he was addicted to a lot of these different things. So now he's been totally clean of everything for many, many years, decades. And here we have him smoking the shisha pipe while he's delivering all the dialogue. And let's just say, I think it kind of all went to his head very quickly. And he was, I mean, I do have like behind the scenes footage, and I edited like behind the scenes sort of like a making of documentary, day by day, which used to be on YouTube, but it's gone now. But I do still have it, but there are lots of outtakes of him just completely going nuts, having smoked massive amounts of all this shisha. I don't know what was in it, but he went crazy.
Yeah, I smoked shisha once. It was this is when I still smoked cigarettes, but it's something like, I've estimated it's something like one of those balls or pellets or whatever. It's like you could have something like 500 cigarettes or something insane like that. So Jesus Christ, yeah, I can imagine if you've been totally clean for a couple of decades, that must have been like.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we were all just in fits of giggles for the whole day, and for some reason we couldn't work out what it was, and then eventually Barrington realised it was the shisha.
I mean, I will admit I have kind of like clipped out a couple of if I'm driving my poor wife mad, I just clipped out a couple of my favourite sort of lines of his, the filthy dog's bollock, and I know my own son's name, you terminal fucking disease. just keeps blasting out of my laptop at irregular intervals. She hasn't.
It's a kind of wonderful idea that you were hotboxing yourselves while making this film.
Yeah. Exactly.
What I love about Barrington is just his physicality as well, and even in movies like An English Haunting, where he's kind of there as a bit of a prop to some degree, just the physical thing of having him there is amazing. But it was also very interesting to watch An English Haunting and then later come to House of Violent Desire.
Well, yeah, and sorry. I know, yeah, Gemma said to me on many occasions that she sort of feels there isn't enough perversity in modern horror. And after I saw this, I was like, I just messaged and said, trust me, that is not a problem here.
Yeah. You did Clive Barker proud.
Thanks, yeah.
You're welcome.
Certainly, it's really interesting to watch House of Violent Desire. I mean, I can understand you want to certainly. I've seen some of the other, as I said, the interview you did with Laurie Brewster at Hex, where you were talking about how Labyrinthia said kind of it was kind of like a stepping stone, but it wasn't the kind of film you really loved making and really wanted to make. When that kind of started with Cannibal Farm, which is just. Oh man, we need to talk about. We'll talk about that in just a moment, because I have so many thoughts, so many questions. But House of Violent Desire, because you did Cannibal Farm and The Barge People, which, as I said, are really rooted in those great 80s kind of sort of straight to video type movies, and then you did House of Violent Desire, which is a very, very different thing. It's very gothic and it's very character driven, and it felt very personal. It felt like a very personal statement in some ways from you. I don't know if that's.
Yeah, I mean, it was to an extent. I mean, in terms of how I used to put these scripts together, obviously Labyrinthia being an exception, sort of as you mentioned there, it's like with Labyrinthia, I kind of made this film because I kind of could. Like, I was trying to see what, I had absolutely nothing. And for anyone who does go and seek out that movie, you just got to remember it's maybe only interesting because it's made by someone who has absolutely nothing. Because I'd just come out of film school, I had no money, I had nowhere to film. I'd sort of used up all my favors. None of my family wanted me filming around their houses. I'd done all of that. I'd made 20 short films. I'd got blood on the wallpaper and blood on the carpet, and I'd done all these things. So I really had very little, and I just had this part of this farm where I could build these tunnels. And I thought, I'm just, as I often say, like, I'm just kind of addicted to this filmmaking, and I just had to make something, and that's what it came out being. Didn't know it was going to go anywhere or do anything. And then when it actually got distribution, I was a bit like, oh shit, this is not actually, first of all, I want to make horror films, and it's not really a horror film. And, so I took a step back and had to look at what actually I wanted to make. And so went ahead and did Escape from Cannibal Farm. And basically there's two styles of horror that I really love. One is the sort of like gritty Texas Chainsaw Massacre style, which is what Cannibal Farm is trying to do and what Barge People is trying to do. And then the other style I love is all the Italian horror, all the Mario Bava and the Argento. And so in the space of a year, I shot Cannibal Farm, and then House of Violent Desire was actually what came after. So those were the two shoots that I did, and I've always enjoyed, actually, even now, I like, if I do one thing that's like, a slow and elegant style, then the next thing I do, I'm going to want it to be fast and rough and, just feel completely different, to always shake it up in some way. But the way I was coming up with the scripts back then was that really I would have a location, and that's kind of it. That's all I have. So in Cannibal Farm, I've got the farm. That's all I have. And in House of Violent Desire, I had this castle, and that's all I have. So the film can't have, special effects, monsters, this, that. It has to just be people talking in a castle. So the way I would approach the script would be to, assemble some characters. I think there was 10 characters for House of Violent Desire, and I just sort of branch off and write the most bonkers characters with the most bonkers backstories, and same goes for Cannibal Farm, but I think with House of Violent Desire I took it even further, and then
the thing that I absolutely loved with House of Violent Desire was your commitment to Bava lighting, which is the best, but also that amazing payout where you're like, oh, wait a minute, I don't think that is a demon. I think maybe that's just a guy with a mask on.
Yeah.
Literally a sex mask on.
Yeah, and in fact, that's something that I used to do, or something that I was finding very important when I wrote Cannibal Farm and House of Violent Desire, was I wanted to market the films as something really commercial. So with House of Violent Desire, I wanted to market it like there was like it was a ghost in the castle or a demon. So I was going along the lines of Insidious and Conjuring and all those sorts of films, because I thought that would get the film sold, and marketed. But then there's this reveal that there's nothing supernatural going on at all, and it's all just this pervert in the attic played by Barrington.
The best kind.
Coming really,
and the same thing for Cannibal Farm, that it's sort of meant to be sold as like a sort of Texas Chainsaw Leatherface type of a thing, but again, the cannibals, I mean, it's called Escape from Cannibal Farm. There's, I've sort of, now that I can have the perspective to look back, I realize, there's not even really any cannibalism in the whole movie, and it doesn't actually deliver. But I thought back then that I was being clever by making this film where actually the cannibals aren't even the bad guys. It's actually
it's worse people than them. Yeah,
exactly. The revelation
the
is that
who run the farm aren't even the cannibals.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like the revelation is the bad guy is actually within the family, rather than you actually end up feeling sympathy for the the evil characters and the Leatherface character. So I was trying to be clever and do something different. I
remember when they sort of actually get to the farm and they get caught, and I'm like, well, we must be halfway through the film. And the guy goes, shit, no, we're not about 20 minutes in. What the fuck? And it was just kind of like, it just keeps going and escalating. There are these new layers and twists and strands to it, and it's just like, okay, I don't know how, I'm not quite sure how all this is going to pay off, but I am totally on board for this ride. And this as well. I mean, you'd already worked with Katie Speak in Labyrinthia, but she's terrific in that film. You've got Barrington, you've got Rowena Bentley. I think that was the first time you worked with her. You had this real powerhouse kind of. David Lennox, another one of your frequent collaborators. This is really very strong cast together, and all this stuff going on. And there's the thing when someone gets out of the furnace and someone gets shot, and it was like, holy shit. When that happened, it was kind of oh my god, yeah. I was just kind of like, okay, I was kind of totally in awe of the kind of, it's a kind of really quite epic, almost operatic quality to it.
Yeah, I mean, all of them do, actually. Even something like Winterskin, where a lot of it is inside of a cabin. You know,
you kind of went from having this very big cast thing with a very opulent thing with House of Violent Desire to this very constrained, kind of pared down two people trapped together.
And in fact that was a direct reaction, because I had House of Violent Desire was 10 actors, and we had all of them together at the castle for 23 days of filming, and we all stayed in a villa next door to the castle, so it was constantly a lot of people, and it was difficult for me as a director to make sure that all the performances were where I wanted them to be at all times. And I'm sort of, afterwards I'm looking back and I'm thinking, maybe I was biting off more than I could chew there, to have 10 people with, all 10 of them have masses of dialogue in that film. So all 10 people, and I'm trying to get performance out of everyone to match each other. And so I realized that what I wanted to do for the film after with Winterskin was, let's just have 2 people and let's just try and nail it, which I thought, and in terms of locations as well, like it was really a reaction to, you got Cannibal Farm and you've got House of Violent Desire, and there's, as you say, there's so much stuff going on. In fact, it becomes so convoluted. And at the time I was really just, it was a really cool and creative time, because I wasn't doing it as a full-time career. It was just me being able to make exactly what I wanted to make, just for the fun of it. And I really had no thoughts or self-awareness of, should this film run on for 2 hours long with all these different characters and all these different threads? And, it was completely untamed, and you either love it or you hate it. And like most people out there, it probably is not their cup of tea. But to some of us, horror fans who love the weirder and the freakier stuff, it might click for us. But
I love to see people swing, and whether they connect or not. But I gotta say, you connect more often than not.
Well, that's good to hear. But yeah, coming off of those 2 films, The Barge People was what happened next, and it was not my script. And it was like, I looked at the script compared to my scripts, and it was an extremely simple script, or it felt way more simplified. And as I was filming it, even, I was kind of thinking, this, I needed to always have something going on. Like in the House of Violent Desire, there's always lots of stuff at play. And on Barge People, I kind of had to learn how to go, well, hang on, this is your opening 20 minutes, and all we really need to establish is that people are having a good time and that we like these characters. And I was I guess maybe I was kind of like scared as a director, like, is that enough? Do I need stuff happening in every scene? Do I need dramatic revelations? And when I watched Barge People, I realized, actually, simple is better. Like, simple is more effective, and is actually more commercial, and it's more what people want to see. They don't want a whole convoluted thing, because it gets too much. And so when it came to Winterskin, that was the goal, was single location, 2 characters. Let's see if I can just nail it, just like this. And of I'm always looking to progress with each film. And I think Winter Skin was probably the first one where, when it was finished, I kind of thought, I think this is not a film made for me in a completely sort of untamed, unaware way, but it's actually a film that I've made with the audience in mind, that hopefully people could sit and watch this, and hopefully it can be like a tight 80-minute film where people would be taken on a journey. And that was kind of the film where that started to become more in my awareness.
Yeah.
I will say that it manages to still be pretty damn gothic. It is like this misery / Hellraiser thing, this collision of incredible amounts of blood and emotional torsion.
Yeah. Well, we had to build the set, the cabin. We had to build it completely from scratch because I knew of the amount of blood that I was going to want to use. And that was like one of the coolest parts of the film, was that in a friend of a friend's back garden, there was a big space at the end, and we just built the whole thing. And it was also raised sort of like a meter off the ground, because I also knew we wanted to get underneath and come up through the trapdoor and all this sort of stuff. Wow. So it was quite a sort of a huge undertaking to put this whole cabin up. And then the shoot itself took about 26 days. And my theory of that it would be sort of easier and simpler to film a movie in one space with two people it's the complete opposite. It ran way over, and it was way harder, way more stressful, way more difficult. And it did start to actually feel like you were trapped in some sort of hell, because you were every day in that same cabin with the same two people,
Which is kind of the idea of the film, to be fair. So you think, I mean, you can see the kind of connectedness, you can see kind of common ground with House of Violent Desire, in that you have something that's set up that you think is going to be like some kind of supernatural evil, and it's not. And also you have Rowena Bentley going completely batshit insane evil, terrifying, in a absolutely barnstorming performance in both of those films. Absolutely loved every moment of Winter Skin. I thought it was terrific.
Did I hear that there was so much blood spilled during that shoot that the floorboards began to soak?
Yeah, that's right. That because you watch the film and there's a lot of blood. You get, literal buckets of blood, as in I am literally standing with a bucket of blood, ready to launch it at the actor multiple times in the film. You can, if you watch Winter Skin, you can see if you count them, every time a huge splattering of blood gets thrown in someone's face, for every take, there was probably about 5 or 6 takes where we had to keep throwing the blood, especially in the shootout at the end, where I was just filling balloons basically to the brim with fake blood, and then just throwing them, across the room at people to make the big explosion happen. And we were going through just tons and tons of them. And by the end of the shoot, all of the wooden floor was completely distorted, completely warped. It was all on every plank of wood was on a different level of swollenness to the other.
I love it.
This is why we had to build the set, because if we'd have done it anywhere in an actual location, I would be being charged for the entirety of the location. I would have completely destroyed it.
That's right. You're gonna have to pay to have it burned down.
Exactly.
There's something so wonderfully theatrical about that. And, to go back to Bava again, it reminds me of that incredible shot from, I think it's Black Sabbath, where you realize that Boris Karloff riding through the woods is just him on top of a fake horse with guys going back and forth behind him as the trees.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing in the world to me. Scrims and shadows and implications, and it's like, how much of a room did you actually have? Oh, we just had the corner. That's all.
Yeah, I think you've said that lighting is one of the really essential things when you're making when you have those kind of limited resources to kind of make things look to get things looking right and to kind of possibly make sure the bits that might not look so great don't appear on the screen kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I think, films these days, a lot of stuff you get on Amazon and like straight to Amazon stuff, they're so brightly lit, the full house lights are just shining down on everything. And actually, if you look at films, from the 70s and all the straight to video stuff from the 80s, there were always shadows and darkness, and it can be a low budget filmmaker's best friend, because if you don't have the budget to show it all, then you can light it in a way that hides things, which has sometimes been the case.
Chiaroscuro and just saturated stuff. I mean, it's very funny to me as a former film critic, because people constantly are arguing about whether things are too dark these days. Like, oh, there's only blue and teal. Those are the only two colors anymore. And I'm just like, man, it's like things can be dark. It's perfectly fine.
So when you can't actually see what's going, when you actually have no idea, you can no longer understand what the hell's supposed to be going on. That which can be a problem with a lot of shaky cam kind of stuff as well. And don't even get me started on mumblecore, because I struggle with films that aren't subtitled. At the best of times, I've often been not. I'm one of the because we think. We're probably being from that generation, where you were used to listening to songs and trying to work out what the lyrics were as best you could, and finding out years later that you'd got them completely wrong. So it's a lot of mumblecore stuff. It's like, I tried to watch that film Spring, which is I think Adam Moorhead and which is supposed to be very good, but it's like I was like, I can't understand a fucking word these people are saying, and there were no subtitles. And it's like there is no justification for not having subtitles or anything made, more than, more recently than certainly anything made in the last 10 years. Unless, of course, it was kind of like even the people who were supposed to be doing the subtitles. Like, I have no fucking clue. Sorry, let's get off this particular hobby horse of mine.
Yeah, no, we're both old. Let's face it.
Somebody used to say about Derek Jarman, I think, was that he paints with light. One critic said, and I think that's a very good kind of description. It's very you've got that awareness of lighting and how to make it look. And of course, it's interesting because as well, a lot of directors. I mean, you do work a lot with obviously basing your stuff around locations, but you're also not afraid to actually make something by, I'm going to get a bit of space here and I'm going to construct a location and which I can do what.
All the undersea stuff in Gods of the Deep.
Wow.
Some of the best suit work I've seen in quite a while.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I never. I mean, I like to always keep things practical. I've never worked with computer effects, and I like to keep it all old school. One, because I don't actually have the resources anyway to go and do, CGI and all of that stuff. And I mean, when I do see it in films of this lower budget level, it rarely looks good and it rarely looks convincing. But I don't know, there's something about doing it practically that just sort of has a charm. And that the same goes for like building a set as well. It's like, I mean, the cabin in Winterskin actually looks really good and really authentic, but, there's been other sets that I've built where, take, for example, Gods of the Deep, the submarine. And it's like, I know that I want to do it and I'm not going to try and do it against green screen or something. Like, I'm going to just do exactly what's in my head, but, I'll just do it practical and I'll just build it however I can for the budget, and it's there and we can go and work in it. And I mean, I don't mind things looking theatrical or like, to me all films are fake, so it's all fake. So if it looks fake, kind of doesn't bother me that much. In fact, I kind of really shy away from naturalistic films and naturalistic stories in terms of like what I make myself. The worst sort of horror film I would want to make would be like a film set inside a modern day suburban house, you know, which is when you watch indie films, that's a lot of what it is. You know, it's just modern day. The house has got white walls. They're in the kitchen. They're in the living room. You know, I don't think I've ever made a film in a house. You know, it's just not interesting to me. Even with the Barge People, which feels much more sort of like natural. The narrow boat where a lot of the film takes place on, that's a set as well. You know, obviously the exterior is a boat, the interior is all a set. So
testing a real narrow boat the way you.
No, exactly, and
yeah,
once
exactly.
again, yeah, if it was a real narrow boat, it would have sunk because, you know, once again, sending characters through walls and blood spraying everywhere. Yeah, but you know, I'm glad you think that you know that you noticed the lighting of the movies, certainly as well, like stuff like House of Violent Desire, because with a lot of these indie films, you know, the budgets are so low that people end up shooting the films in 7 days or 10 days. And in fact, with my films, that's never been the case. And as I say, with House of Violent Desire, we were out there for 23 days. Yeah. And when you have 23 days, I mean, it's not long, you know, but in a micro budget world, I suppose it's quite a luxury to have that many days, and lots of care and attention really was taken over the lighting and the framing of the camera. And if we had to do 10 takes of something, we'd do 10 takes. And if we had to relight because it wasn't looking good enough, we'd relight. You know, sort of despite the budget, we still were going out to make films that would hopefully kind of hold up. And, you know, from a sort of visual perspective, I think House of Violent Desire does. It's more the crazy characters and scripts where it sort of goes more off course in retrospect. And same goes for like these sets that we built. You know, not many indie films can actually take the time to build, you know, a cabin from scratch so that they can destroy the whole thing. But, you know, it's those attentions to detail that I'm sort of, you know, at the time and still now, I was hoping would make people interested in these films going forward, because, you know, it's impossible. It feels impossible these days to make anyone actually pay attention to your horror films over anyone else's horror films. There's so much content out there and there's so much stuff, you know, so when you've got a teeny budget, how do you even contend with, you know, the massive stuff that's coming out with 100 times the budget, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, with the attention to detail and with the attention to acting as well. You know, I mean, there's no phoning it in that I see in your films, which, you know, I see a lot of in other films.
I mean, everyone's heart is in it when it comes to my movies. Generally, like everyone's heart is in it, and everyone's doing their very best. So, you know, at least we can say that.
Yes,
I see a lot of horror movies on Shadow and things like that, which are very, you know, they're very well done and they're very, you know, very good, very blah blah, and you know, I've forgotten them. Practically by the next day, and that doesn't happen with your stuff. There may be rough edges, you know, or whatever. But you know what? I'd rather have something that's got some rough edges or something that isn't maybe as polished as something else. But it's got heart. It's got some, and I think it's one of the things that doesn't leave very many people neutral. Some people will hate it. Some people will love it. Very few people will just go meh.
Perfect example of that is Werewolf in England.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I love that film. And I mean, Tim Cartwright, who's another one of your regular collaborators, who's more likely to, he's like in Werewolf Castle and Gods of the Deep. He's playing these quite kind of contained, you know, very centered characters, and in A Werewolf in England, he is just unleashed. And I love Horace Raycraft. What a fantastic character! Oh, I do admit you give me a tingling and me nether giblets. It's just a phrase I will be using at some stage.
There's a film that I really love, Horror Express, which is an Amicus film with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. And one of the things that I love most about it is that it's like a super silly, super horny Doctor Who episode, basically. And And
monsters, we're British, you know.
yes, monsters, we're British. So yeah, it's like any spark of joy that you can get in this very occasionally dour genre of ours. It's what I'm looking for. Joy all over your stuff.
Yeah, and Werewolf in England is as you rightly mentioned, it is the one of all of them that has divided people. Not that many people are really watching my movies, but of the people who do come across my stuff, some people really hate that film. And when I released the trailer, because I'm really happy with the movie. And I kind of, I'm not actually happy with many of my movies. As I say, I've done 17, and there's maybe 5 that I actually think, this is a good movie that I would recommend. Taking in mind the budget and what have you. You've got to go in with the mindset of you're going to watch a low budget movie. But there's probably 5 of them which I could give to you and say you're at least going to enjoy it. You're going to notice the rough edges. They're there whether we like it or not. But there's going to be something to entertain you because that costs nothing. That's my job, is to come in and provide the entertainment. And anyway, this is all to say, within the top 5, maybe even within the top 3, I have A Werewolf in England as one of my personal favorites. And I judge these top movies of mine by when I set out to make it, did I achieve what I set out to do? Because I think sometimes people, when they're like kind of judging and criticizing your movie, they're kind of looking at it and sort of, they'll say this or they'll say that. And, sometimes you wonder, like, but you realize I intended all of these things. Like,
yes, to me, exactly.
To me, that's what makes the films either good or bad. I'm obviously no stranger to bad reviews and, internet trolls really going after my stuff on Letterboxd and YouTube comments and all this sort of stuff. But, like when I made An English Haunting, it was a film where every single shot, I sat down with that script, I planned it out meticulously, and I shortlisted it. Pretty much every single shot and every single edit and every part of it is exactly what I wanted it to be and what I was attempting to do. So to me, it's a complete success. And then with A Werewolf in England, it's a similar sort of story. If it was that, if the performance was that ridiculous, or if it looked that cheesy, or if the set looked that fake, or if just all of it, it was completely what I was trying to do, and I was really happy with the results. But I put out the trailer on YouTube, and it was just getting so many dislikes, more dislikes than likes. And
sorry, I don't know what that's about.
Time you did something as well.
This keeps happening.
Flying up past the screen.
Sorry, he's getting so many dislikes.
And so it really does divide people. But it's a special treat. I think it's a special treat if you can go along for the ride and find the fun in what we were trying to do with that one.
Absolutely, yeah. It's really fascinating to see that and see, An English Haunting, this one very, very restrained and beautifully done sort of classical ghost story, and then this thing which is basically like dog soldiers out of The Evil Dead. But
with a lot of sex jokes. A lot of
sex jokes. I particularly love the bit where Jessica Alonso is basically bouncing around on top of Tim Cartwright. The poor the guy who plays Archie Whittaker's there on the floor, handcuffed to him. It's like, Jesus Christ. absolutely.
Yeah, well, the way we shot that scene, and it was done this way for schedule reasons, but actually it's now a trick that I know for future reference if I was to do another scene like this. But they weren't there on the same day, Jess and Tim. But that actually really worked so well because, I have the tripod set up and I'm standing over Tim and I'm just really telling him to go with it, go even further, and that, you know, there's no awkwardness because there's no other actor there for him to be acting against. So I'm really telling him, you know, bigger and make it crazier and be more outrageous with it, and then he is sort of bringing in some of his own improvisations and saying all sorts of outrageous things. And then the same thing goes for when we got Jess's shots. It was like, you know, just telling her, you know, make it more weird, make it more crazy, do more weird expressions, and they both really went for it. And then it was only when I cut it together that, you know, the sort of the magic happened, and it was like, oh my god, what have I created?
There are so many moments in that film which I just think are pure gold, like when he's trying to sort of keeps aiming his gun up at the werewolf, and it's just every time he does it, just shits all over him again. and Rory Wilton's sort of death scene. I mean, Rory Wilton always reminds me a bit of Matt Berry. Yeah. And you know, when he's like, no, there's nothing we can do for him. Help! I'm still alive. I'm just imagining Matt Berry delivering those lines. But I mean, because I absolutely love Werewolf in England. I'm really glad that you feel that you know that you rate it so highly out of the because I understand that actual shoot was one where all sorts of issues made it an absolute nightmare. Did someone steal the actual wolf? Some bastard stole the actual wolf heads.
Yeah, well, what happened was I think it was like maybe a 21-day shoot, and we got to day 4, and on day 4, the 3 werewolf costumes arrived. They'd been handmade by a company in Arizona and shipped over. The whole process took a long time, but all these suits are, you know, hand punched hair and, you know, hand painted. You know, it's not just, you know, it's the people who've made them have put real effort in, and they're quite expensive as well. And so the suits arrived, and on the end of day 4, we kind of put them all away in the set because, you know, the whole film, all of the interiors are a set. So we've got a 2-floor hotel and all the various rooms. So we've got the suits are tucked away. They've not even been on screen yet. And the following morning, I went into the set and they were all gone. Or I should say, in fact, it wasn't all the suits. It was just the heads, the 3 great big heads of the werewolves were all gone. And lo and behold, the only person who could have done it could have only been one of us, you know, one of the people on the team. You know, so long story short, there was someone among us who wanted to go home. You know, they had regrets. They didn't want to be part of this shoot. They had other things going on in their lives that were more important, and they decided they didn't want to be involved in the movie. And so the way they shut the film down was to take the werewolf heads. And I still to this day don't know what ever happened to them or what they did. I just know that this person got up early, disposed of them, and then sort of waited for the carnage to break us all apart, which is exactly what happened.
This person who did it, I mean, have their remains ever been found?
Seriously?
I mean, no. I mean, the werewolf heads have never been found, and the person who did it, let's just say, they have never worked on another one of my movies ever since.
I'm not surprised.
Understandably.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Just say you want to go home, man.
Well, in fact, the person did say they wanted to go home, but it's too late when you're on day 5 of a 21-day shoot. Everything's booked, everything's done. You know, you can't just undo it. And this person was essential, non-replaceable. Although they did have to be replaced in the end.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's amazing.
So it was a tough one, and then we basically put the shoot on hold for 2 weeks. Ordered new heads, which had to be made, you know, as quick as possible from scratch again and shipped over. And then even then, when we continued the filming, the heads still hadn't arrived. And in fact, some of the characters, like Mark, who plays the Reverend, he actually was never on set with a werewolf. He never saw the head of a werewolf. And when you watch the film and you see that he has fights with the werewolves. Well, if you watch it closely, he's never in there with a head. He never shares the same shot as an actual werewolf head, because there were none. And so luckily I have everything planned to the finest detail, because when it came to sort of finishing off the shoot, and all the schedule was knocked out of whack, and some of it we'd filmed, some of it we hadn't filmed. I needed to know absolutely everything, like eye line and who was looking at what and where, and who was stood in what doorway and what side to be looking, just to make everything come together. And luckily, I was on the ball, and I had it all planned out, and it all came together. But same for like the werewolf fights. I had to film the werewolf fights without the shots of the werewolves, and then I had to go back at the very end and insert the shots of the werewolves, matching the lighting and the framing and all of these things to make it all come together. And so maybe part of the reason why I like the film a lot is that when it all came together, I went, wow, it all came together, it all worked out.
No one will know except me
exactly
how hard it's supposed to do.
And this is what people really don't take into account, when they do go on Letterboxd and start slating your movies, is they don't take into account all these, all these different things that go wrong, and all these obstacles you have to overcome. I think, I'm guilty of it too. Like a movie comes out on Shudder or whatever, and you sit down to watch it, and everyone's been raving, everyone's been hyping it up, and you sit and watch it, and you think, well, that wasn't all that special, whatever. I'll go and leave a bad review of that on Letterboxd, and say what a load of rubbish it was. But then, you got to remember that I think we just assume that people have gone out, they've been given the opportunity to make a film, and they've gone out and they've had everything at their disposal, and they did the best they could. You don't take into account that, the whole production might have shut down for 2 weeks because the costumes got stolen, which, by the way, for me, I rang the production company who'd funded the movie, and I said, this is what's happened. I've had to shut down. I've had to order new heads. There's going to be a delay, and it's going to cost me a lot of money. I've got to get all the cast back. I've got to get new accommodation. And their response was just, the budget stays the same. It is what we agreed, and the deadline stays the same. You don't get a 2-week extra. You have to still deliver. And so these are the constraints, and a lot of
replace the bugger who stole the
heads.
Exactly, yeah. And so for the movie, I spent all of everything I would have earned making it. I spent out of, so I earned nothing for that film. Plus, I took out a credit card and had to put other charges on it just to get the thing over the finish line. And it's these sorts of like massive financial and personal sacrifices that you have to continuously make to stay afloat. When people say to me, about my work ethic and stuff, or about, 17 movies through my company in such a short space of time, sometimes it's difficult to look at it and go, yay, isn't it good? When actually, the burden and the sacrifice that has to be made. But, at the end of the day, it's all for the love and the absolute passion of the movies, and just nothing in my life is more important than making these films, as good as they can be, even though is actually you're fighting a losing battle right from, doesn't matter how much you want to, how prepared you are, and it just doesn't matter. It's a losing battle right from day one, because, the small amount of money that you have never is going to quite match the film that you're trying to make.
That's true.
But, it's a miracle, and it's actually a miracle when all things do turn out okay. So to say that I'm happy with 5 out of 17 of them, is miraculous. To have made the miracle happen 5 times is like, wow,
It's a recurring thing, I think, with any of us. I'm sure. I'm sure, Gemma, you've had this as well. There's what you want to make, and then there's what you. It always. Arthur Machen said, "I dream in fire, but work in clay."
Yes.
same kind of the same kind of person.
And as a writer, it's so much easier anyways. I used to teach screenwriting, and if I had $1 for every time I said, no, if you want to be able to dictate the weather, you're gonna have to write a book, man.
Yes, it's a hell of a lot easier.
It's a map. It's not a Bible.
Yes.
Yeah, but
I mean, Harold Pinter once said that, sort of he'd written, I can't remember what point in his career he said it, but I've written X number of plays, and each one has been, for me, a different kind of failure. That's Harold Pinter. What chance have the rest of us got?
Basically. But, the two things that people always forget when, particularly if they haven't been involved in filmmaking as a process.
Yeah,
and
which
yet
is so collaborative. So many. It's kind of like herding cats. I suppose you've got to get so many different, so many ducks in a row, and all the ducks are running around.
Passion versus the practicalities is always where things end up. And
I mean, to have actually made these films, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's one of these things. I mean, because another thing that really struck me is you're not like some nepo baby, as I think the common phrase is. You came out of film school with something they don't. I mean, I did a media performance BA at Salford University way back in the mists of dawn in the 90s, which gave you some big stuff about production and directing and acting and writing, but it didn't really teach. The thing they don't really teach you is how to actually how to network, really, how to make those connections with people, and it is. I mean, one of the reasons I moved. I was tried to write screenplays. One of the reasons I moved away into writing prose was, you can just do this all on your own. You don't need to get a cast together. You don't need to get a crew together. You don't you don't need to actually try and get them to do as they're told for 5 minutes and get a shitload of money together. I haven't got your willpower in that respect.
It's true. I mean,
there's always, I think, to be any kind of creative artist, you've got to have a very, very bloody-minded attitude and total refusal to accept reality, which is possibly why there's such a thin line between. They say there's a thin line between genius and madness. Well, certainly between.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that, because sort of as I was saying earlier, there was sort of a complete unawareness when I was making my earlier films, and I kind of got to a point. I got to a point kind of in the middle of the films I've made so far where things started for the first time to dawn on me, what the reality of, okay, I'm doing this as my day job, but what's the reality of that, and how to keep going, and how to sort of learn not just the creative but also the business, and all these different things. But if you wiped the slate clean for me right now, and I was not making films as a full-time living, and I had to start, I think I'm way too aware now, and I think way too much of things now. I probably there's probably no way that I would. I mean, I would never look at a farm now and go, that cow shed, I could build some tunnels in there, I could get some go-karts in there. I would never have that thought. But when I was 21, and in fact, all through my teenage years, my head was so in the cloud with films, everything just films. I mean, from age 15 or so, I was making 20 short films, one after the other, all my spare time, writing a script, filming the script, editing it, watching it, and that just carried on all the way into Labyrinthia and Cannibal Farm. And only in the last few years did I sort of wake up out of this weird head in the clouds bubble I'd been in and realize, oh, this is where I am, this is what I'm doing, and this is the reality, and this is how hard it can be, and all these different things. So it's good, it was good to have had. It got me started to be so not aware. But yeah, God, nowadays, I mean, so I agree. It's actually madness that gives you your beginning.
Yeah, I've been rereading last couple of days, Skeleton Crew by Stephen King.
Mhm.
And he does have that thing where he says you don't do it. It's not about, you don't do it for the money. You don't think about what you do it because not to do it is suicide.
Yeah. Can I ask you what's next for you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, what is next for me? I mean, so at the minute there is, you know, the thing with me, there's always a pipeline, there's always a backlog of movies. So from an outsider's perspective, of what's next for me, my next film that's going to be released is a film called Night Harvest. And it's a killer scarecrow movie, and it's set in 1970s Tennessee.
Nice.
That shoot is a whole too long a story in itself because of all the disasters. I mean, that one did not quite go to plan, but you know, the results are sort of a mixed bag. But you know, there's some of my best stuff in there maybe, but some of my worst stuff in there too probably. But you know, I shan't say too much about it. But that's what's coming out next.
Okay.
But you know, that's all shot, done, delivered. To me, that film's ancient now, but it's, you know, it's not coming out till September. And then there's a film called He Sees You When You're Sleeping, which is a Christmas themed slasher movie set in the 80s, which I filmed in New York. And I got to work with Caroline Williams from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Oh wow!
Nice.
Which, you know, Texas Chainsaw. I mean, I'm a huge Texas Chainsaw fan, and I'm a big Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 fan as well.
Yes, I can kind of tell.
Yeah, and so there's this great character in the script. You know, it's not like a bit part; it's a central character. So we had Caroline for that, which we were really lucky to get. And then we also had Lauren Marie Taylor, who is from Friday the 13th Part 2. But
nice.
She's also just been in the new horror movie In a Violent Nature, which I've not seen yet, but you know, everyone's raving about it. And she was, again, fantastic to work with. So in fact, the entire cast actually were really phenomenal on the movie. So, and that one's got a little bit more of a sort of like a lighter comedy tone. We were already, you know, I don't think we were shooting yet, but it was already like planned, prepped and paid for by the time we found out that Terrifier 3 was going to be a Christmas movie. And I think they're both coming out like within sort of a month of each other, you know, as we get nearer to Christmas. So, you know, my worry now, I suppose, is that who's, myself included, because I'm a real Terrifier 2 fan, it's like, who's even going to care about any other Christmas horror movie this year when you're competing with Terrifier 3? It's kind of, it's a horror film that is very light-hearted, it's very full of comedy. It's like, it's not a scary film, it's like, it's fun and silly and very it's very campy. So it's complete, you know, if people want a Christmas horror film this year that's not going to be gross and gory and sadistic, then they can watch my Christmas horror film, He Sees You When You're Sleeping. And then there's another one, again, done, finished, and ready to come out, and it's called Lord of Wolves. It's a werewolf movie, but completely different from anything I've ever done. In fact, it's what we were just talking about. This one is set in the modern day, and it is set just modern day London, real life locations, real life people dealing with very real life issues. And it's like, I mean, it's a drama more than anything. I've been submitting it to film festivals already this year. The responses haven't been, you know, that great, but I think, you know, I have to remind myself, you know, it's about 45 minutes until werewolves actually even appear in this film, because it's really drama focused. You know, it's all about the characters, and it's a very personal movie. It's kind of actually biographical. It's about, you know, people in their 20s in London and sort of the struggles that they go through, which, you know, do get exaggerated into an extreme way because, of course, werewolves come into it. However, it is based on, or some of it is based on my 10 years of living through my 20s in London and things that actually happened to me and happened to people I know, and so all of that goes into this. So there's a bit more of an authenticity in that one to the drama and the really quite serious issues that some of the stuff goes into there, which is like very unusual for my movies. So those are the 3 that are upcoming. They're all done. And then in the pipeline, there's always so much stuff in the pipeline. At the minute, the industry is in a place where like it's the most sort of turbulent I've ever seen it. So if I said now what I'm making, I could be completely wrong, you know, which sometimes has been the case. Like sometimes I have made diversions. I've written one script and said that's what I'm going to do, and then I've diverted off to do something else, because I always just take, you know, whatever the best offer is at the time. Whoever comes along with the most money and, you know, the most creative freedom, that's where I'll go. So I think I know what I'm doing next. I think I may have my next 4 films lined up, but who knows? You know, I can't say what they are because they could change. But I will say that one is, you know, all of my films that I've made are funded by companies that come along and they say, you know, we fancy a werewolf movie or we fancy a haunted house movie. Probably about 50% of my movies are sort of like written to hire like that. You know, in fact, I can say now I never wanted to make a werewolf movie. Like I wouldn't personally choose on the low budgets that I work with to tackle werewolves, because they require, it's essential to have a big budget for a good animatronic werewolf with everything going on. So it wouldn't be my choice to do it, but when the money's there and someone's asking for it and werewolves are what's selling, that's what you have to do.
I was going to say, you've done about 3 years. This is like your third foray into the werewolf sort of subgenre, and
and in fact,
different each time.
Yeah, in fact, with Lord of Wolves, what I realised is I thought probably someone's going to ask me to do another 3rd werewolf movie, so I'm just going to go ahead and develop it, because, like, if you take, for example, Werewolf Castle, you know, that was actually sprung upon me so last minute, and then I had 25 days to get the script written, and in fact, I think even now it's my fastest turnaround, because from the day I heard that I was going to have to do another werewolf film to the day it got released, I think was less than a year.
Wow.
So it didn't even exist in my brain.
Wow.
On you know, and then a year later the movie's actually in the shops. So to counteract that with Lord of Wolves, I knew a 3rd werewolf film was going to be asked of me. You know, that was just a guess. And so I spent a year writing the script and really slowly coming up with it over a long period of time, and then having to condense a really huge script down into like a much tighter 90-something minute movie or whatever it is. So anyway, usually companies are dictating to me what I have to make, which, you know, I'd rather it wasn't that way, but I'm grateful to be like working and making the movies, so I can't complain. And I do actually get complete creative freedom. Basically, I've always had complete creative freedom to do whatever I want. No one interferes, no one messes with my scripts, no one messes with my edits. However, this is all to say that I've got the funding, and this has taken a long time, but I've managed over the course of the past year to get the funding up together through private investors to make something that I have complete control of, which I actually haven't had since probably Death Ranch, which I think is my favorite of my own movies, because that's the most...
film. I'd read in a couple of interviews, obviously there'd been some films which had been written to more of an order than others, and I think Vampire Virus is the one that most falls under that description. But Death Ranch was kind of like, this is very different, because you're like, oh, we are literally out in the wilds of Tennessee here, and and a cast who aren't, you know, any of the sort of familiar actors we're used to seeing in your films, but it worked. It was like, oh, I'm enjoying it. I am on board for this. Nazis getting cannibal Nazis getting their asses kicked. It's like, where's the popcorn?
Several different types of exploitation crossbred. I love it.
Yeah. With Death Ranch, that was an idea I'd been wanting to do for ages, and everyone I pitched it to liked the idea, but they were kind of like, people want commercial things like vampires, werewolves. Nobody was going to give me the money to do, the KKK, cannibal clan, blaxploitation movie. No one was going to agree to it. So that was that was a privately funded movie, and so this one of the ones coming up is also going to be privately funded, which means I can just be completely free to do as I please, which is what's going to get the best results,
Yeah, I mean,
I agree.
I think you said that An English Haunting was basically some very nice chap just basically gave you a chunk of cash and said go off and make a movie.
Yep.
Which must be. I mean, what would you do if if another incredibly nice rich chap basically gave you sort of dropped like Hollywood blockbuster movie into your bank account and said off you go?
Well, I mean, that's kind of one day I'm kind of hoping that will happen. I mean, I'm always out there pitching to, one thing with all my movies, I'm usually pitching to all different people. I don't just have like one company that just continuously funds me, because then you kind of become a slave to that company. So usually by the time I'm starting to feel like a workhorse for that company, I divert and go and find funding from somewhere else. So I'm only ever making sort of maximum 2 or 3 films with one company before I go off and find somebody else. But yeah, I mean, I guess I've always been hoping that, maybe someone out there will see my movies and they'll see what I can do and how much sort of bang for your buck I can actually give. I mean, that's been a goal for me, has been to take these small budgets and actually try and maneuver the filmmaking in a way where actually I will sort of crack this code of making it look so much bigger than it actually was. And in the case of like my film Freeze, I felt like I really had done it. I mean, it's not quite there, but it's like it's almost there. But it's basically the whole film feels like way bigger than it should. So
yes,
I was going to ask what kind of budget you have to work with these films, but I don't know if that's kind of the kind of thing you're not supposed to really talk about.
No, well, I mean, I'd love to share those sorts of details. The only reason I don't is because if you put it out there, like if you put a price out there, then everyone who comes to me, they know that price. And in fact, not only that, but for other filmmakers who are, making films on a higher budget than me, people will then come to them and say, well, this guy's making them for this cheap, and it lowers the bar for everyone, which is something.
And then lots of other filmmakers are coming over to your house with like baseball bats.
Charlie.
Which is actually, it's something that's made film. I was saying the industry is quite rocky at the moment. It's something that's contributed to that turbulence. Is that there are people making, so many films a year, way more than me. I mean, 5 years ago, I used to come on podcasts and people would say, wow, you're doing so many films so quickly. Well, now there's people doing 20 films a year. Like people are just churning them out. And some of these people are very vocal about how low their budgets are and how quick they turn them around. And I feel the effects of that. Actually, I have face-to-face meetings with investors who say, well, this guy or that person, they're doing it twice as fast, half the price, and then I'm then forced to try and match that sort of thing. So that's the only reason I won't say.
Well, yeah, but what's the quality? What does the eventual thing look like? I think I've seen some of those films.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah.
I mean, as you say, that the hope is obviously people will the more you do, the better you get, and the more of your work is out there, and the better the chance of people see. I mean, as Gemma knows, I've bored him enough times with it. One of my favourite authors when I was growing up was Jack Higgins. The Eagle Has Landed, and that book made him like a millionaire. It was his 36th published novel. He was just like knocking out like 2 or 3 books a year under multiple pseudonyms because publishers don't like to bring out more than one book under the same byline in a year. And just kept cranking them out. And I doubt he'd ever expected to sort of make that kind of money. But yeah, Eagle has landed. Oh shit. Okay, I now need to move to Jersey to actually not have like 99% of my wealth taxed off me, kind of thing. But overnight, become a millionaire, pretty much.
So who knows?
We can all hope for that.
Yes.
Yeah. Hopefully, one of these days, someone sees one of my movies and thinks the budget is, such and such, comes along, offers me, you'd like to think that people are, I mean, obviously I'm biased, but you like to think that people are smart and that they'll, these people who fund all these lower budget films would look at my stuff and go, oh, look what he's able to do with so little. Well, maybe if we just gave him double, maybe we'd get a film double as good and we could contend with the bigger horror movies of the year. But that's not actually how people think. It's more, he's made that so cheap. Well, maybe he can make 3 for the same price, if I ask him nicely. That's more where people go with
being a victim of your own success in that particular sense.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, would you ever? I mean, you can obviously you've spoken about a lot of existing kind of properties, existing franchises that you loved. I mean, would you ever consider making a movie as part of another ongoing franchise like Texas Chainsaw or Elm Street or Friday the 13th or whatever?
Oh yeah. I mean, and I suppose when the time eventually comes where I make a film that is good enough that captures the attention of those people, and I don't think I've yet made a movie that has done that, I don't, or that could do that or should do that. I don't think I've made my best thing just yet. So I don't actually get down at all about why have I been doing this? Why have I done 17 of them? Should I not just give up? Am I ever going to get anywhere? Like your chap with your 36 novels.
Yeah.
Very, very similar thing. It's like, no, I will keep going to 36 because in fact I know, or I will know when I make something that is, ticks all the boxes for me. Hopefully, as I say, when I've got the funding, the private funding where I'm in complete control, I should actually see much better results. So I hope that when I do make the thing that I go, right, that's it, I'm putting my best foot forward here. In fact, I would send it myself to the right people. I would hope that one day someone would come along and say, here you go, you can make something in this franchise. Texas Chainsaw Massacre would be like an absolute dream. But hey, I'm even happy to take something like Children of the Corn. I'll make one of them. No, there's definitely franchises I would love to do. And in fact, sometimes when I'm conceiving my own films, sometimes it's born from like, oh my God, I'd love to make my own version of, Elm Street or something like that.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of go, well, I can. It's not Elm Street, but hey, I'll just write a similar sort of a thing, and I'll have this stand-in for Freddie. And so sometimes I do conceive of projects where I'm just like, I'm already kind of doing that. But I can't use the IP, but I'm still satisfying in my brain. I'm doing exactly that,
Well, perfect. I'm so glad that I got a chance to talk to you, and this has been really wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
Hey, no problem. And obviously, if you have anything upcoming and we can do anything to help signal boost it, you're more than welcome.
Yeah,
back on here.
Yeah.
Couple of quick questions, because I believe there's going to be a new release of a re-release of Cannibal Farm with some new. Is it with some stuff taken out and some stuff put in?
Yeah, that's right. So basically, what I've been doing over the past couple of years is I've been like getting sort of like self-distribution rights in place for some of my films. Some of them I've kept. and some of them I've managed to sort of like wrangle back. So like Freeze, I have the rights to release as a Blu-ray, and the same for Cannibal Farm and House of Violent Desire and The Barge People, maybe a couple of others, but these I've managed to get all the rights because with DVD being now completely dead, the money actually just isn't there where it used to be in these films. So for me, I want to actually make an effort to put these out onto Blu-ray, and really I kind of need to take a grip on my own physical
media
output at the moment, because it's gone. What used to be in Tesco's and Sainsbury's isn't there anymore. So now it's up to me to make my own nice editions. So I've been kind of getting everything prepared for that. It started with a re-edit of House of Violent Desire, and that Blu-ray and disc is like completely done actually. Like the whole disc and the menu and the new special features are all done, and the film has been recut. I mean, this is like, I did this like 2 years ago, but the film's been recut and it's shorter and slicker, and kind of feels a little more simple, but the good stuff's still in there. And I think one crazy deleted scene might have come back into it. I can't remember. But in the case of Cannibal Farm, I've literally just like within the past week done the re-edit of it. And when the film was first done, it was 115 minutes long. And then I showed it, I did the screenings to friends and family and stuff. And everyone was saying, cut it shorter, get it shorter, it's way too long. So then it got cut down to what it actually has come out as, which I think is about 101 minutes. And now the re-edit is, I thought, right, I've got to release it again. I've got to get everything ready for my Blu-ray. So, I sit down to watch it, and sometimes I like revisiting my films, sometimes I don't. But I sit down to watch this film, and it's my first real effort to make a horror film, and so I'm seeing all of these issues. So I've cut it way down to 83 minutes. Which is now like just very slick, the making sure, I'm just looking at it from a more commercial perspective now. I'm making sure they get to the farm within the first 20 minutes, and I'm making sure it opens with a big gory scene. And so I've shifted everything around, taken out a lot of the dialogue that was unnecessary. I mean, there's been about 18 minutes of cuts, and that's all just to people talking, so all you're left with is the action, the horror, the stuff that people actually want to see. But from the 115-minute version, there were some cut scenes. I know one specifically comes to mind with Barrington, where he has a real Barrington villain speech. He's like shirtless with a shotgun and has a big old speech that got cut, that now I'm looking back through, I'm like, that can go back in. So even despite the cuts, some stuff that's never been seen has gone back in.
Did I know it would involve Barrington, the reinstated?
Yeah, exactly. And so that's all come together to make what I feel is, hey, it's my first horror film. There's definitely issues with it, but actually, hopefully, for the first time, this Blu-ray can go out and people can watch it and go, oh, that was actually a bit more crowd pleasing. Not loads of dialogue to have to sit through, but we actually just get into the horror and deliver what the film kind of promises. And for all these films, I've got new artwork. In some cases, I've got 2 lots of new artwork. Some of it was like really quite expensive. I had Sadist Art Designs do posters for Cannibal Farm and for House of Violent Desire. And I mean, the House of Violent Desire one I've had for years probably now, and I have it framed on my wall, but nobody has seen it. I've never posted it or shared it. Because when the DVD or this Blu-ray limited edition comes out, I want that to be the first time people get their eyes on it, But, it's been something, I'd say it's been something that's been in the workings from literally when I made and released those films. I said, can I keep hold of the rights for a Blu-ray release, which will be like a exclusive thing to my website. And I may, I've slowly been working this, but never had the time to actually get around and release any of them. So hopefully by the end of the year, these will start to release in their new versions, new and improved versions.
My bank account's going to take a hell of a beating.
Yeah,
I might put them on my Christmas list. And
yeah, put them on the Christmas list.
mine as well, I think.
Just one question we should definitely ask for the benefit of our view. Where can our viewers and listeners get hold of your stuff? Where can they see it, buy it?
Well, the best thing to do is just to go onto Amazon and just type in Charlie Steeds, and hopefully all of the stuff will come out. I mean, hopefully your listeners like DVD. All of my movies that I've ever made are all out there on DVD somewhere or other, in some country or other. So you can get a physical copy of any of them. And yeah, best thing to do, just go onto Amazon and type it in. And then as for digital, I mean, I don't really watch anything. I'm a physical media person. So I don't know, like if you're an American, you've got Tubi. I know that I've got a bunch on there. Even on YouTube, you know, it's such an unglamorous way of like watching movies and having your movie go out there. But if you if you put into YouTube, you know, full movie Charlie Steeds, I'm sure a bunch comes up. Half of them probably illegal, but hey, you can probably watch them.
And your comedy Dark Temple, Dark Temple Media, Dark Temple Films,
Dark Temple Motion Pictures.
Excellent. Yeah.
And that's that people be able to purchase the Blu-rays through there when they come out.
Yeah, so later in the year, whenever these begin to come out, you'll be able to get them through the website. But I mean, I'll be just everywhere on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. People will know that these films, when the time comes, because, you know, the money goes into my pocket on these releases. So when the time comes, trust me, you'll know that they're out there.
Linking like a maniac.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent.
Okay. Have you got any other questions, Gemma? Or?
No, not really. I've just had a lot of fun. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, you've had great questions. It's been really fun talking to you guys.
I suppose the only other question I would want to ask you is, are there any questions you wish we'd asked that we didn't?
To be honest, no, not really. I mean, I love this when it just flows like, you know, a nice natural conversation. I mean, for me, it can get difficult when there's, you know, when we're talking about all my movies, you know, and there's you know, I go into my brain, it's like I was on set and then I was editing, I was writing, there's so many memories are all flooding back to me. So it can become, you know, you're at danger when you do that, you're at danger of, you know, getting a load of stuff but never quite the story or the insight as you would if you focused on like just one or two films. But we kind of did focus on the earlier stuff, and you guys really did your research, and you know my stuff, so that's why the conversations flowed so nicely.
We are fans.
Yeah, no, definitely, I can tell.
I might be tying my wife down and making her watch Werewolf in England again.
And my husband wants me to be sure to say that he is a huge fan of yours as well.
Oh, lovely. Thank you very much. No, that's really nice to hear.
And so all our viewers and listeners, if you haven't seen any of Charlie's films, go and see them now. And if you have seen them, go and watch them again, because they're a lot of fun. They're great.
Yes.
And I think that's pretty much all we can say. So, Charlie, thank you so much for coming on. It's been brilliant to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
And as I say, you're always welcome back if you have anything else to tell to spread the word about.
Yeah, that would be great. Perfect.
All right.
Okay, so
thank you, guys.
We will be back very soon to lower the tone of the conversation once more, as we do so well. But until then, I have been Simon Bestwick.
I remain Gemma Files, and this, of course, has been No Darkness But Ours.
With Charlie Steeds.
With Charlie Steeds.